Good evening, and thank you for joining us for the extended edition of the KRCG 13 Beyond the Podium 2024 Election Special. I'm Megan Lane here in our KRCG 13 studio. We've already touched on a lot, but there's much more to get into. There are multiple high-profile seats up for grabs in both the U.S. Congress and statewide offices here in Jefferson City. Missouri will see a new representative in the House next January. Blaine Luetkemeyer, who has represented the 3rd District in Missouri for 16 years, did not seek re-election and will retire from Congress. Former Republican state senator and founder of the disruptive conservative caucus in the state legislature, Dr. Bob Onder faces off with Democrat Bethany Mann. Onder defeated former state legislator Kurt Schaefer of Columbia in a competitive and at times combative primary. Mann is fairly new to politics, though, formerly working for the EPA. And in District 4, first-term incumbent Mark Alford looks to remain in Congress, facing Democrat opponent Jeanette Cass. Alford became a U.S. representative in 2022 when he won the seat vacated by Vicky Hartzler. Alford is a former TV news anchor. Cass is a fairly unknown candidate, new to politics. At the state level, the race to replace Mike Kehoe as lieutenant governor, that's between Republican Dave Wassinger and Democrat Richard Brown. Wassinger won an extremely close primary, fending off former state legislator Lincoln Huff by just about 8,000 votes. The GOP nominee is a lawyer, with his website saying his main focus is defending the interests of Main Street against the greed of Wall Street. Brown currently serves as the state representative for the District 27 in the Kansas City metro area. This past term, Brown was the assistant minority floor leader and also served as the vice chairman of the ethics committee. Brown has said his biggest goals are advocating for better health care and improving living standards for working class families right here in Missouri. In the race for Attorney General, incumbent Andrew Bailey, who Governor Mike Parson selected to replace Eric Schmitt, that's when Schmitt was elected to the U.S. Senate in 2022. He looks to be elected to the position for the first time. Bailey convincingly defeated one of President Trump's private attorneys, Will Scharf, in what was a highly contentious and at times nasty election. Bailey is running against St. Louis attorney Elad Gross. Gross has been around Missouri politics for a few years now and originally ran against Schmitt in 2020 for this office. Gross sat down with KRCG 13's Grace Gillis for an in-studio interview to discuss his goals and what he would bring to the table as the state's next attorney general.
I'm running for Attorney General because I think our government should be on our side. I used to work there. I've seen a lot of the good work that office can do. When we have really strong leadership that's really wants to make sure that the people of Missouri have great service from our government.
What would be some of your main priorities in office?
Yeah, so I really want to get that office back to doing a lot of those basic functions for people again. So we used to have an extremely strong consumer protection division here in the state of Missouri. A lot of folks don't know this, but we started the do not call list. You wouldn't know that today based on all the calls and texts and everything else we get. So I want a strong consumer protection division that is going after scammers and protecting Missouri families. I want to make sure that that office has a lot of resources to deal with violence in our communities and coordinate efforts all around our state. I want to make sure that we're protecting our drinking water, and that's something that that office used to do. We used to have a very strong division to protect our natural resources, our water, our land, our air. We don't have that there anymore either. I think that office can do such great work to help bring costs down. I think we need antitrust enforcement to make sure that someone has our backs against these huge companies and big monopolies that just keep increasing prices all the time.
And you mentioned crime. The crime rates in Missouri are 28% higher than the national average. What would your office do to kind of help bring this down?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, obviously there's different types of crime. In Missouri, unfortunately, given our strong position from a transportation stance, so we're so central to the country, we have a lot of human trafficking that goes through Missouri. That office is supposed to have a functional anti-human trafficking task force that helps coordinate what's happening around the state. It's not really working at all right now. So I would definitely make that a priority to get that working again. But in the same kind of structure, I think we need a similar task force to deal with violence in our communities too. And that means supporting prosecutors, making sure that folks who have committed violence are off the streets and we're protecting folks, but we need to prevent violence before it occurs. And I've worked with kids for a long time in Missouri. I think that we need investment in our communities, and we need a coordinated effort around the state to do that.
KRCG 13 made multiple attempts to contact Andrew Bailey and his campaign, inviting the AG to our studio for a similar sit-down interview. Bailey's team never accepted our invitation. The Show Me State will see a new Secretary of State next year as well. After a failed bid to become the GOP nominee for governor here, current Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft's future is now up in the air. But in his last few months as the Secretary of State, Ashcroft has had contentious moments after refusing to sign off on Governor Parsons' executive order looking to ban various forms of THC products that are packaged similarly to candy. Parsons said Ashcroft was doing so because of hurt feelings over Parsons' endorsement of Mike Kehoe in the gubernatorial primary. Additionally, Ashcroft was at the center of multiple court battles regarding the language of Amendment 3, with his language being deemed misleading and not fit for the ballots by the courts. Looking to replace Ashcroft is Republican Denny Hoskins. Hoskins has served in the state Senate since 2016, representing District 21, which includes Cooper and Howard counties. He's running against current state rep Barbara Pfeiffer, who represents the 90th district out of St. Louis. And finally, current state treasurer Vivek Malik looks to serve a full term in that role. He's running against Democrat Mark Osmak. Also on the ballot is an amendment that would once again raise the state's minimum wage. Proposition A would raise that minimum wage from $12.30 where it sits currently up to $13.75 on January 1st, then to $15 the following year in 2026. Voters back in 2018 passed Prop B, raising the minimum wage, which at that time was $9.45. If passed, the prop does exempt governmental entities, political subdivisions, school districts, and educational institutions. Here's what both candidates for governor had to say about Prop A.
On the opposite side of the aisle right now, another issue, they're arguing for increasing the minimum wage.
Yeah, I am 100% against increasing the minimum wage from a government. The independent business owner should be able to make that decision. I am not in favor of government setting a minimum wage. It's just not the way our country was built, and it's not the free market principle I live by.
You've also been a big supporter of increasing the minimum wage for all workers in Missouri.
It's super important, not just for the economic development of our state. When folks have more money, they're going to spend more money. When minimum wage was established, it was for young people in high school. Now, so many people are breadwinners of the family, are having to work multiple minimum wage jobs.
What would you say to some opponents who argue that raising the minimum wage might harm small businesses?
We've heard that forever, and we're not seeing that. When employees are making better wages, they're going to spend that money locally in their community.
Prop A would also require workers to be guaranteed up to 7 days of sick leave each year. Proponents of that part of the question argue many Missourians have to choose between their own personal health and financial health to make ends meet. But as KRCG 13's Kermit Miller tells us, business leaders overall appear to be concerned with what a passage of Prop A would mean for their businesses.
On the ballot with more than 200,000 signatures, Proposition A raises the minimum wage to $15 per hour by 2026.
Theoretically, they are voting on a nonstop increase because it ties the wage in Missouri to CPI.
Corchus says the Consumer Price Index is a moving target affected by high cost of living states such as New York and California. The business community is even more focused on the sick leave provisions. Proposition A says any employer who employs 15 or more workers must guarantee 1 hour of sick time for every 30 hours worked. There is no cap to hours accrued, but those employers can limit the amount of sick time used to 56 hours per year. Employers with fewer than 15 workers can limit the time used to 40 hours per year. But it's not even the hours that business organizations worry most about.
There are provisions in this proposal that prevent you from asking an employee why they're sick, for example. You can't require a doctor's excuse unless an employee has used more than 2 days in a row of leave.
McCarty says the truly ominous language allows workers to sue employers to recover unpaid time off, actual damages, reinstatement and back pay, liability for attorney's fees, and more. As they have argued with previous successful worker initiatives, the business organizations say Proposition A will inhibit expanded hiring and production and will land in consumers' laps in the form of higher prices.
We're already at what I'd consider a peak of what a consumer tolerance is for prices when they go out to buy anything.
The critics say labor costs have had much the same effect on employers.
They don't expand their business, or they just give up and they go work for someone else. You just get into a hunker down mode and you just don't do anything, and that's kind of really where we are right now.
Missourians for Healthy Families and Fair Wages raised more than $5 million from labor unions, worker advocacy groups, and out-of-state organizations in support of Proposition A. If Amendment 2 and sports wagering are of interest to you, well, then Amendment 5 may be as well. Amendment 5 would make it possible for casinos to be built on waterways in the state that are not the Missouri and Mississippi rivers. Right now, casinos are restricted to just those two bodies of water. After originally being denied on the ballot, the amendment was added back after Cole County Circuit Judge Dan Green ruled there were sufficient signatures through the initiative petition process. The Osage River Gaming and Convention Group sued a decision by Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft to reject 2,500 referendum petition signatures as uncountable. The vote comes as casino company Bally's and Eldon-based developer Gary Pruitt want to build Missouri's 14th casino on the Osage River just below the Bagnell Dam. Missourians will decide on Amendment 6 as well, a constitutional provision to reinstate a $3 court fee. That fee would fund the retirement system for elected sheriffs and prosecutors. KRCG 13's Ryan Smith spoke with the Boone County Sheriff about this.
Amendment 6 seeks to reverse a 2021 Missouri Supreme Court ruling that found court fees to support retirement funds for elected sheriffs and prosecutors unconstitutional. The fee was enacted as a state law in 1983 and is $3 per case when a guilty verdict or plea agreement is reached. The revenue from the fee would fund the sheriff's retirement system. During the ruling, the Supreme Court found that the fees were, quote, not reasonably related to the expenses of the administration of justice.
The thing that people are really missing the point on is it wasn't the $3 fee that the Supreme Court had an issue with. It was the fact that the fee has to be reasonably related to the administration of justice. And they felt like retired sheriffs were not part of the administration of justice.
Boone County Sheriff Dwayne Carey, also a board member of the Missouri Sheriff's Retirement System, says the ballot language for Amendment 6 is confusing.
The word benefits that you see in the ballot language is retirement, right? Retirement is a benefit that is earned while you are an administrator of justice, and you take that benefit into retirement. So it's just really trying to correct that decision and clarify that retirement is a benefit that is carried into retirement.
Carey says the Missouri Sheriff's Retirement System is underfunded since the court fees went away. Beginning this year, sheriffs began contributing 5% of their salaries to the retirement system. He says if the measure doesn't pass, they will have to find another source of funding or the retirement system will be wiped out in 9 years.
We haven't been collecting the $3 fee since 2021, since the ruling, right? And so we have around 9 years left before the fund becomes defunct if we don't find a funding source. And then if this goes defunct, when I retire, that's what I'll get.
Proponents against the measure fear will incentivize police to make more arrests to earn revenue from the fee.
This isn't like simply if you're arrested and you go to court and the charge is dismissed, you have to be found guilty in order to pay this $3 fee. Then the caveat is a judge, if they believe that it's going to create a hardship, they just waive all fees.
Reporting in Columbia, Ryan Smith, KRCG 13.
Mid-Missouri will elect 2 new members to the state's Senate this cycle. In the Columbia area, Democrat Stephen Weber hopes to flip Senate District 19 seat from red to blue. Weber's running against James Coyne. The winner will replace Caleb Rowden, who is being term limited. Rowden originally planned on running for Secretary of State, but ended up dropping out of the race just 2 months after announcing his candidacy, all while sitting on the most money of any candidate. Rowden simply stated he dropped out because it was, quote, no longer in the best interest of his family to run at this time. As we already mentioned, Denny Hoskins is hoping to become the state's next Secretary of State. Current District 51 GOP Representative Curtis Gregory faces off with Democrat Jim Bates for this seat. The District 21 seat in the state Senate has had political influence the past few years, with Hoskins joining in with others, including Bob Onder in the conservative caucus, that has often led to gridlock on the Senate floor. And as state senator, Hoskins was one of the main roadblocks in the efforts to legalize sports betting, something the legislature attempted multiple times to legalize on their own before Amendment 2 brought it directly to the voters. And one other local open seat is in the House. Columbia Representative Doug Mann stepping down just after one term under his belt. Mann says he needs to step away to prioritize his mental health. Greg Bush is running against John Lane for that seat, which covers much of South and Southwest Columbia. We do want to mention again, polls open Tuesday, November 5th at 6 a.m. They'll stay open until 7 p.m. If you are in line by 7, you are guaranteed the right to cast a ballot. You can also participate in no excuse absentee voting that's up until Election Day. Just check your county clerk's website for times and location. That will do it for our KRCG 13 Beyond the Podium 2024 election special. Election Day is just a week away, and we will have you covered every step of the way here at KRCG 13. You can find extended interviews for tonight's special on our YouTube page. And as always, you can find all of our election 2024 content online at krcgtv.com. Just look for the Beyond the Podium tab. But for now, I'm Megan Lane. Thanks for joining us.